Recording in progress.
I'm recording. Hey, we're back with Harrowings Live with Rachel Caisi Miller. And I'm going to admit her now. And are you here, Rachel? There you are. After a little false start, Harrowings has gotten Rachel on with us here. We met, so to speak. I was in the back of the room hiding as I was in a was this, enterprise search talk you were giving at KM World in the JW Marriott in DC. And you started in on some things I thought were very interesting towards the end of your talk. And we were talking a little bit before this about doing good, being good ancestors. Harrowings likes to like churn up the surface of like how we got to be who we are and what really lights us up inside. So I'll give you the microphone over to Rachel and let her introduce herself a bit and with those thoughts in mind. I don't hear you, Rachel. Rachel, I can't hear you. I don't know if your microphone is muted or what's going on. No sound. Wow. We are having a lot of technical difficulties. You hear me, correct? Not up and down.
Test, test.
There
Now?
you are. There you are, Rachel. You're good. I
Yes.
like the fact
You
I
can
have
hear me?
Yes, I
Yes.
can hear you. We have very low production values on the Harrowings podcast.
Is it echoing?
I don't hear an echo. Are you echoing? Am I echoey?
I think I am.
I don't hear you. There's an echo.
Uh,
You sound good.
Let me try leaving coming back.
Okay. Well, anyway, I can extemporize on this because the Harrowings podcast really has the idea of trying to um, be as open as we can about what lights us up inside. And Rachel is back. I think it could be partially my problem, Rachel. I see I've got original sound for musicians on. So you may be picked up by my speakers when you speak and echo back. So let me see if I can find that setting on my audio.
Okay.
Go for noise removal. Yeah, that should eliminate any echo.
Test? Yes.
Sound.
Good now.
I usually do these with my vocal coach, Sonny Triple, and
Uh-huh.
that's why.
Cool.
So, as I was saying, we'd like to sort of churn up the surface of things and find out what lights people up inside. And then we can go on with some talk about some of the work that you've been doing outside of your mainstream work, where you were talking to us about enterprise search at KM World. I think even more interesting was some of the things you brought up in the past. And we kind of connected on the idea of supporting organizations like Seva.org, for example. Over to you.
Yeah. So now that the microphone is working, so yeah, during my normal day job, I've been working on search for quite a few years over at Reddit as a product manager. And I think that job has given me a lot of skills and resources that I need to go on and build other sort of movements and initiatives. So outside of my day job within Reddit, I've built a couple different employee resource groups and movements around accessibility, mental health, sustainability, and just generally encouraging people to use data to make decisions about giving and giving back. And then outside of my work, I've volunteered at Taimaka, which is a nonprofit revolutionizing malnutrition care, and doing product management work for them because they have a couple of digital tools. So I help them improve that. And then just generally enjoy speaking on encouraging tech workers to do good with their resources and their time because I think tech is filled with very intelligent, resourceful people. And if we can get a small percentage of those resources or time or skills over to good, important causes, I think that's incredibly important.
It is. And I remember you gave some statistics on how much to think about giving. I don't remember the details, so can you refresh my memory?
Yeah, so I don't think there's necessarily like a right or wrong answer for each person. I think it really is individual, but generally, people in the Western world are in the top 2%, 5% of the wealthiest in the world. So there's a really cool calculator called the How Rich Am I calculator. So if you
Oh,
just
cool.
search that up, it will show it's through an organization called Giving What We Can. I always love to take people through it because they put in their salary after tax, then it'll put them at the very top, like 1-2% of the world, and I think it really helps put things into perspective.
Yes.
Um, that being said, of course, like living in London is not the same as like living in rural Nigeria. So you can't necessarily like compare the two, but I think it does give you some perspective. And with that in mind, I'm a part of a community that does a pledge. So it's usually called a giving pledge, and there's two main organizations that the people I know pledge through. One is One for the World, and the other one is Giving What We Can. And essentially, this pledge is saying that you're going to pledge a certain percentage of your salary to high impact charities. So these are charities that have been vetted by third parties that are shown to be some of the most cost effective treatments in the world. And you can pledge anywhere between one to, I guess you could technically pledge 100% of your salary, but usually people go between one and 10. And then you generally make that pledge for the rest of your life. So I've done that now at 5% for a few years, and
Wow.
I know quite a few people who are around the 10% range. But yeah, it's a great community, and I think it's just a great way if you don't have necessarily the time to give to giving back. Like your money can go a very very long way, and if you just automate your donations in a way like this, it's very easy to just sort of set it up once and then don't think about it again.
Well, that's fantastic. And I really wanted to lead with that because I think that's so important in our world today. I like to walk down the street and I'm constantly sort of narrating what I'm seeing in front of me, just taking in the passing show. And I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm just up north of DuPont Circle. I don't know how much time you had to explore when you were here in D.C., given your
Just a
time.
little bit, yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of nice restaurants and stuff and a lot of homeless. And
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
the same time, I'm walking down the street usually saying, every cent we spend is a vote for the kind of world we are co-creating.
Hmm.
That is something that I hope that people will take to heart and mindfully spend. I like to walk down through the farmers market where you can get local produce and such. Um, and, just look at all the faces, look at all the people who are out here in the world. And most of us feel kind of powerless to do anything about the trends that the world appears to be going through in
Hmm.
the media. And I'd like to get your reflections on how you measure the impact you're having as you go through the work you're doing, both as a volunteer about malnutrition and is there a specific geographical area that you're focused on malnutrition?
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
Hmm.
It's very interesting. There's a lot of focus on Nigeria lately. I was at a thing called Aspire talk
Mm.
was to get us all spun up into being entrepreneurs and such. And one of the things they were doing was a thing called Impact, and it was about drilling wells in Nigeria in particular to get
Mm.
water to people. Because not only
Hmm.
do they need food, you need clean water, and a lot of the world doesn't have access to that.
Yep.
We could actually spin that into something about our interest in artificial intelligence and the amount of water that'll be consuming.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'll leave to you to talk a little more about um, some of the work you're doing and how you measure impact.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, it can be really tricky. And this is one thing that I try to speak about as much as possible because unfortunately, a lot of the most popular charities are ones that simply have the biggest marketing budget. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are the most effective.
Right?
And I think a lot of things go into where you decide to donate. And I do encourage people to do a balance of what is called like head and heart giving. I don't know if you've heard of that concept, but it was actually researched pretty thoroughly, I think, at Harvard, that essentially says that when someone gives to charity, if they give to something that is very cost effective and by the numbers is super super impactful, and then they also give to a charity that's close to their heart, let's say maybe the local animal shelter that they walk by every day, they're more likely to give more money if they're giving to both rather than just something that maybe is very effective but they are not like physically connected or emotionally connected to. So I do encourage people to do that in terms of maximizing their impact because there is an important aspect of feeling like you can actually see the impact of your work, and not just sending your money off to an organization that, in theory, sends you numbers back and says that they did X amount of good. Um, And then in terms of identifying the most cost-effective charities, so this is actually a really, really complex issue and problem space. And there are third-party organizations like GiveWell, which you've probably heard of,
Right.
that all they do is they spend time researching charities and crunching the numbers for you so you don't have to do it. And they will essentially look at all the money that's going into these organizations, and then try to quantify the actual impact that they're having on the area that they are trying to affect. And unfortunately, a lot of charities are actually very inefficient. And so I think from their research, they've determined that some charities are up to 100 times more impactful than others, just based off of how they use their money, and the interventions, especially that they choose, because some interventions, even though they feel good, they're not actually making a dent in the problem that they're trying to solve. So those are a few things that I think about.
Yeah, and it's also Charity Navigator. I think you may have mentioned that
Hmm.
one. I've used that in the past. In addition to Give Well, I think that those actually are charities in themselves, are they not? And give
Yes.
some
Yeah. Yeah.
support. Yeah, and I think that nudging the needle a little bit for people, anyone can do it. I like to think of it as micro philanthropy of sorts.
Hmm.
We talked a little bit before we got on here about some of the background I have when we were trying to get things technically worked out. And,
Hmm.
for me, it's been a journey from going into tech and then seeing as I was working that I didn't feel that a lot of my impact and my day to day work was really contributing to the greater good, though it was lucrative.
Hmm.
So spinning things out, finding things that lit me up inside. So that's sort of what I want to hear from you a little bit more about. What really has motivated you to take the course in life you have? I think you've had an interesting trajectory from what I picked up in internships and just opportunities falling your way. And if you'd like to tell me a little bit about that, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely been a winding journey. This is one thing that I
Mhm.
always tell people who are interested in getting into tech or product management, like, there's no straight journey. I think a lot of people find their way through different avenues. So, I think growing up, I always wanted to like do good, help others in some way. And at
Right.
first, I thought this meant being a vet. So I actually spent the
Okay.
first few years of my degree studying biology with every intention of going to vet school. And then I think I realized I didn't actually want to go to vet school. Like it was another, 7 years of school and then residency and whatnot. It was a long, long process. And so I thought, okay, well, what's another way that I can still do good in the world, have a big impact, but do it a little bit more quickly. And at that point, I had actually transferred universities as well and ended up in California, which that was the first time I was really exposed to the tech world. I'm
Okay.
from Texas. And so that was like,
Okay.
oh, wow, I didn't even consider computer science as an option.
Hmm.
Like, no one in Texas does computer science. And so then I started thinking, okay, well, what if I go down the tech route? And I think I realized that technology would eventually be a part of every single field. And so, even if I decided I did want to go back into bio eventually, like there's going to be a biotech space. So I felt like it could open up a lot of options and then I could choose a path to go down. And so ended up studying computer science and then going into the field at Reddit. And I think that was definitely it's been a great opportunity. It's been really, really good for learning best practices, being able to have a huge impact on the world, which I think is mostly pretty neutral, helping people find what they're looking for on Reddit. But I think it's also mostly set me up to be in a position to make the connections and also just build the skills to build my own initiatives. So I think I mentioned earlier that I started a couple movements within Reddit and then a couple of things outside of the job as well. Um, but I think, yeah, Reddit really helps set me up for those sort of things.
Well, that's wonderful. It's great when a company does support those types of efforts. I was working with one that really did a lot with Search Dogs Foundation,
Mm.
and they would bring the dogs in at special events and things like that. It was really, really quite edifying. And thinking of animals, they need that help. My wife's father had legal blindness. I never met the man.
Mm.
His name was George W. Bush, of all things. But he was a forklift driver, believe it or not, legally blind
Okay.
forklift driver at Rolling Rock Brewery in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Anyway, so I gave a lot to guide dogs for the blind. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and blindness, is something that can
Yep.
be corrected in many cases. So we were
Yep.
talking about SEVA earlier,
Hmm.
SEVA.org, and I got connected to that through one of the most, random kind of things. I went to a 80th birthday party for a figure of the counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
Originally Hugh Romney, who was a beat poet kind of guy coming out of New York,
Okay.
Boston with Martha Graham, and then they moved to the Village, and he ended up having a roommate named Bob Dylan in 1961 or so. But
Cool.
the Hugh eventually became it went to California, kind of like you did, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there he ended up starting what's called the Hog Farm, which is one of the oldest running communes still going.
Mm.
He's 89 now, but he had done
Yeah.
a lot of good in the world. And one of the things he did was write a little book here. I'm going to probably cause an avalanche because I do that sometimes. It's called Something Good for a Change and
Mm-hmm.
was renamed Wavy Gravy by B.B. King at the Texas Pop Festival. Before that, though, the Hog Farm was the security at Woodstock, and you probably
Mm-hmm.
heard of Woodstock as one of these historical events that happened about the same time, from my
Yep.
perspective, that Hitler invaded Poland, but the same distance and time back
Yeah.
from your life to compared to mine. But in any case, there he was known for getting on the microphone and say, "What we have in mind is breakfast in bed for 400,000." And
Yeah.
he, his wife, others involved in the hog farm set up a free kitchen. And I've interviewed on Harrowings podcast before Lisa Law, who was one of the people who
Mm-hmm.
set up that free kitchen. So I
Cool.
love this thing that we have the generations going. Another person I've interviewed recently was Jay Blakesberg, who was talking about the implosion, the dot bomb phase. And I told you about my
Mm.
trajectory with a company in Denmark during that phase of around 1999, 2000, 2002 is when it blew up for me. Um, and Jay was mentioning Petpedia, Pets.com, I guess, was one of the things that spun up around then. And, for veterinarian background, this
Mm-hmm.
reminded me when you were talking about that, that I had Jessica Alpha on, and right now she's working on an app that'll help
Mm-hmm.
people diagnose their pets and know when to take them to the vet because her mother was a vet.
Mm-hmm.
And she
Yep.
was really tired of hearing at the dinner table, I wish they had come to me earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But she's using the artificial intelligence boom to
Mm-hmm.
work on this, and it's not quite launched yet, but I've had her on a couple times to talk about that thing that
Cool.
lit her up inside. So you wanted
Yeah.
to be a vet, you went the pre-med route, or you went the medical kind of
Mm-hmm.
biology route. As how long did it take for you to realize you were not going to go that route, but you were going to go the other route? Was it you were at a? Do you mind telling me the institution you were in San Francisco or
So it's actually
California?
Claremont Colleges, in Southern California.
Southern
Yeah.
California.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's where you connected to the um, idea of doing computer science.
Mm-hmm.
Tell
Yes.
me about that a little bit. How'd that play out?
Um, yes, I mean, I actually spent many years volunteering at vet clinics because that's something that they want people to do before they go to vet school.
Right.
And sorry?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, basically they had us volunteering at a lot of vet clinics, and I think eventually after like 3 years or so of doing it and like speaking to a ton of different vets, I think I just realized how long the process was to actually getting
Mm.
to being in a practice and such, and like how many years you'd be able to practice if you wanted to start a family. Like you have like 5 years maybe, that you were able to either practice in a practice or start your own, etc. And so it just seemed a bit too long for me. And so that's when I started exploring other things and seeing what the other options were.
Okay. And that has taken you on to that beam. The initial internship you were doing, I think you mentioned that you
Mm.
were joined a company. It was small. And can you tell me more about how that played out?
Yeah, so after I decided to make the switch, it was
Mhm.
definitely a bit rough because I had absolutely no tech experience, and I one of the things you always do in tech is you try to get a summer internship. And so I was coming in with like super super basic computer science courses because I switched so late in my degree, so like halfway through my degree, I switched to computer science. So I had very few things to actually say I was an eligible person for this. And so I did end up I think it was my first year. working at a small startup that was actually based out of San Francisco in the travel space, but they actually had me working on the search results page. And so I did a bit of design for them, and I ended up doing some product management as well.
Mhm.
And I think that sort of just made me realize, oh, I actually quite enjoy product management. I think I felt like coding was a means to an end. Like I understood it, I was able to do it, but I didn't have a passion for it, which I felt like I saw in a lot of other people.
All right.
And so the next summer I tried to get a product management internship. It didn't go great because again, I had one internship under my belt. I still had just only a few basic courses. But I ended up actually teaching computer science through
Oh, cool.
it's what's called Alexa Cafe. I don't know if it still exists, but it's part of ID Tech, and they generally run courses for young students to teach them computer science starting at age like 10. And it was a program just for women. So it was teaching girls how to code at a young age, which is something I'm very passionate about and continue to be passionate about in getting more diverse people into the field. But I think that was awesome in the sense that it increased my confidence in, I know this stuff. I'm a good person to be in this field. And then also just really understanding the core concepts because when you teach something, that's the best way to learn. So I think it really set me up well for the final third year of internships where I did get the Reddit internship. And they actually had an opening on search, so that actually panned out matching well to the initial small startup I worked at.
Ah, that's really interesting. The teaching of kids to
Hmm.
code, that
Yeah.
just sort of lights it up for me as well. And focusing on women in particular,
Hmm.
and diversity is so needed in our society to stop looking at people as labels and start looking
Hmm.
at more as everybody has the opportunity to play at the table and we're all equal nodes on the network. That's what I
Hmm.
tend to think. I tend to think in this global view of a
Yeah.
non-hierarchical network that we really are. I think the
Hmm.
powers that be would like to think of us still as the tribal sort of like pyramid structure of the chief on top and down the line, but it's not that way. It's not
Hmm.
that way in reality, but we are tuned to think of it in those terms by our culture, and I've watched that transition over time.
Hmm.
I think we're going to go there. I don't know when it's going to be. One of the guys at that conference, I don't know if you ran into Daniel Rasmus at all, but he was talking about,
No.
he was wearing a Star Trek lapel pin. And I hope to get him on Harrowings one of these days too to talk more about, he wants to realize that Star Trek universe, right?
Mm.
A post money kind of society where everything is sort of in that what I like to call radical utilitarianism, where
Mm.
we have
Hmm.
realized the greatest good of the greatest number of species on the planet, not just
Hmm.
people, because
Hmm.
we're just another animal running around this globe.
Yeah.
And we've done an inordinate amount of damage. I want
Hmm.
to pivot a little bit, and I know your time is probably, let's go another about 11 minutes or so,
Yeah.
if that's okay. Then we'll go to
Yeah. All good.
10:35. Um, the point being that I think that what we have with this AI boom and
Hmm.
these large language models is a wonderful extension of my consciousness, right?
Hmm.
I can use it as an adjunct brain, as a research assistant. It's not a very reliable one sometimes if I
Yes.
just use a chat bot and don't go back to the details. I don't know if you've studied anything about my background, but really, I'm the executive director of the Harold B. Gill Foundation, which stewards my
Hmm.
father's legacy. He was a research
Hmm.
historian in Colonial Williamsburg. And
Hmm.
the idea for me is to take that same legacy, develop primary documentation, but
Hmm.
always go back to your sources. If it's printed, it's suspect. If I'm talking, fact check me,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. I want to see that happen. So you are basically now deep in the weeds of application of artificial intelligence functions, I guess, with
Hmm.
search. Is that correct?
Hmm.
How do
Yeah. Yeah.
how
To
do
an
you
extent.
see it globally, big picture, as well as um, however deep in the weeds you'd like to go?
In terms of like the future of AI or what
Yeah,
specifically?
and then how you're applying it now, what it is, because I think the
Mm.
label itself is not particular. It leads us down a path to think of it as sentient. I think we talked a
Hmm.
little bit about that begin in the beginning, and my intense skepticism about silicon ever becoming sentient.
Hmm.
Over to you.
Um, Yeah, I mean, it's the hot thing that everyone wants to talk about.
Mhm.
And I think it's really just an umbrella term that's become really popular because previously it was basically just called machine learning.
Right.
That was like the early version of it in which, you just have the sort of input, you got your basic training data, you have the labels, and then it gives you an output.
Mhm.
And this is just like a much more advanced version of it.
Yeah.
And I think because of the way that it can perform so well on language, is why people are calling it now this like intelligence rather than just like machine learning. They're calling it now, something, a being maybe that you, if you want to call it that, that's intelligent. I think we are sometimes giving AI a bit too many props. I think you mentioned this before, but it still makes many mistakes and many silly mistakes. And I do generally encourage people to be more cautious than maybe we are being, because I think we want it to be this sort of magical box that we can just put things into and then it will magically spit out the right answer. But unfortunately, it's wrong a lot of the times. It makes hallucinations. It's can be extremely biased depending on the data that it was trained on. And unfortunately, most data sets out there are biased unless you're intentionally unbiasing them. So I think, unfortunately, because it is an exciting technology and it has a lot of awesome capabilities, people are going to use it more and more. But I don't think people are necessarily going to take the right precautions in terms of AI safety and making sure that we're understanding the implications. So it does worry me, definitely, about how quickly we're going and how little understanding we have of what actually is being built and what the impacts are.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel that it isn't possible to not be a calculator. One of the things, I don't
Mm,
know if you ran into one of the awardees at the conference we were at, Dave Snowden. He said, AI doesn't hallucinate. We hallucinate. AI
mm,
bullshits. I
hmm.
like that a lot because it is
Yeah,
going to give you answers that will be
yeah,
sticky and keep
yeah.
your attention. And it
Hmm.
emulates or does mimicry very
Hmm.
well,
Hmm.
because it's programmed to do that.
Yeah.
But it's ones and zeros behind the scenes, and it doesn't have any real understanding. Even
Hmm.
though it apes empathy, it's been
Hmm.
it's not real.
Hmm.
So it's not like the human touch. And in fact, I heard recently, I need to fact check myself on this, that one doesn't get the oxytocin
Mm,
from eye to eye contact through the screen. It just
mm.
doesn't happen. People think it
Interesting.
can happen, and they're developing these relationships with each other over Zoom, particularly
Mm.
post pandemic. I don't know,
Hmm.
were you in London during the pandemic? Were you already,
No, no, I was kind of remote in the US.
did
Yeah.
you lock down in there wherever you went?
I mean, I kind of did a lot of traveling by myself, road
Mhm.
tripping, just getting in the car and going to national parks and such like that.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
One of my not really direct friends, but a virtual connection,
Hmm.
who I've seen perform live a few times, did exactly
Cool.
that. Actually, I have the went to different locations.
Oh,
Sent
cool.
out things. She did then live streams of her performances. She's a keyboardist,
Oh, nice.
and Holly Bowling. There she is at
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yosemite, California. Her
That's
husband's
awesome.
a videographer, and she got
Hmm.
in a Sprinter van with him and her dog, and
Cool.
had solar power on the roof, and
Hmm.
they go out to like the Utah Salt Flats and
Yep.
just stream. And that's got me through the pandemic. Actually, I'm gonna
Ah,
Holly a little more. Go out
yeah,
there and
yeah,
find her on YouTube. She's great. She just plays Fish and Grateful Dead covers on her keyboard
yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
any location she is. And this one is in
Very
the
cool.
Bruno Canyon. What else she do? Oh, this was nice in Lake Tahoe. I'd sent her
Hmm.
enough to give her a kickstart for one of her albums. And
Oh,
she gave me a
great.
little shout out in this one in the Cascade at the end, which was sweet. Anyway, we can all do little things to nudge the needle a little bit for artists, for each other.
Hmm.
You've gotten recently on the Substack platform. I was going to do this on Substack Live if we approve this at the end of the day, or whenever. It's no rush.
Yep.
We'll put it out on Substack, and that, to my mind, is also that noted network where there's no hierarchy. People support each other. They can
Hmm.
paid subscription to somebody or just subscribe for free and then amplify the signal through the noise. And I talk a lot about that amplification, trying to amplify your signal through the noise of cyberspace by doing a little interview. And I come by it honestly. When I was 11 years old, I joined the Colonial Williamsburg Fife and Drum Corps. This is a fife.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people
Okay.
don't know what it is. It's six finger hold, very shrill. I don't play
Yeah.
it in the bunker here, where my condo in DC, I call the bunker.
Yeah.
Because I saw out the pandemic through that to get back to that.
Mm.
But I do like to amplify different voices. And I found that the pandemic had that silver lining. I connected to one of my guests I was talking about earlier was Jay
Mm-hmm.
Blakesberg. Jay's a photographer, and he was did this one for instance,
Oh, very cool.
the 2015 Fairly Well concerts. If Soldier Field
Wow.
by the Grateful Dead's Remnants, um, and Trey Anastasio Fish on the lead guitar in place of Jerry Garcia. And Bruce Hornsby, my fellow Williamsburger, was there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be doing more of this fifing stuff, even though I was 11 to 18 in the Corps. I
Mm-hmm.
still get together with the alumni, and on December 7th, we're going to go out and do the Williamsburg Community Christmas Parade, which we've been doing annually for longer than I know.
Oh, nice.
And it's nice to be able to go out. And one of the things that happens with us is in falling in and working with a team, like you're working with teams at Reddit, my individuality tends to drop away. I don't know what
Mm.
your leadership style is, but mine was
Mm.
usually like I am at the bottom of the pyramid, supporting everybody else as a
Mm.
as opposed to being like that top level pyramid. So I highly recommend
Yeah.
service leadership. How do you see that? As we got a couple minutes here for you to wrap up. I got like three on my clock.
No worries. So you were specifically asking about like how do you think about
Leadership
leadership or?
style. Yeah, leadership style is a team lead and the work you do in tech.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not too familiar with like the formal terms used to describe them.
Yeah.
But I think generally what I found to be helpful when starting different initiatives and I guess leading product initiatives within the team is making sure that communication is clear and then also what expectations are from each person is very clear.
Hmm.
So I find especially for initiatives that are outside of people's normal day job, um one of the biggest blockers is people want to do good or they want to get involved in this initiative, but it's too much work to think about what they actually need to do, like the concrete action items. So
Right.
if you're able to provide to them, oh, if you want to help out on this cause, here's what you can do and do XYZ thing. Often I find that's very helpful for people and they like that because they want to be involved, but it's just the mental hurdle of the concrete action items that need to happen to make it happen. So I think that's one thing that I try to do, especially on the more not required for work things. On the work side though, I think, you know, people are more willing to take the initiative because it's part of their formalized role. But I think communicating out the reason for a lot of projects is really important. Because if you have no context as to why you're building a thing or writing certain code, like the importance of it towards the for the company or the strategy, et cetera, it can be very demoralizing and you can kind of just lose interest. Unless you understand more the reason why we're putting all these resources and time into a certain project. So I think that's those two things are pretty important.
That's really great. I really appreciate that summary. And it reminded me to ask you what kind of, when you're doing product management, what
Hmm.
kind of framework are you using at Reddit? I'm just kind of curious because I used Scaled Agile Framework in the
Hmm.
past, which you're probably familiar with, and there are many others. Is there any specific one that is used at your day-to-day work?
Yeah, I think generally the team follows the agile like 2 week sprint sort of style.
Uh-huh.
I honestly feel like it mostly comes through on the engineering side because they do all of the formalized, filling up of the sprint board and then checking off tickets,
Right.
etc. Like I don't really write tickets for myself, but that's usually the framework that they follow. Yeah.
Interesting. So, do you all Scrum? Is that
Yes. Yeah.
one of the things that happens on a regular
Yeah. Hmm.
basis? Is
Hmm.
that daily or is it more
I think it's a weekly practice, but I'm not sure if
yeah,
engineers they might do their own sort of more
internal? Yeah.
often. Yeah.
You have a scrum of scrums maybe that you're at the top of, I would expect.
Hmm.
That we did that at the integrated award environment work I was doing, which is now sam.gov over here in the States.
Mm.
The system for award management. They were revamping
Hmm.
that and doing front end and back end work. And I understand you've moved more to the front end. Is that correct?
Hmm. Correct.
Yeah. Interesting. I could go on and on. I often do. but we've hit 10:46 a.m. and I didn't want to take much more than a half hour of your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll come back sometime. We can dig into other subjects. And yeah, I'm really grateful that you were able to make time for me this morning.
Yeah, thank you as well for making time. I really enjoyed it, and yes, we should definitely do it again.
All right, out here. I'll just
Thank you.
stop the recording. There we go.